And in a way, it was kind of it's fun to play the game at the networks. And it's fun to try to see what you can sculpt out of the material that they allow you to do. And it's like being a lawyer, because the standards people, you're not talking to the FCC or the federal government. You're just talking to a guy whose job is to sort of be the ears of the network and know what is going to cause trouble. And whenever there's a bit that standards calls you to the carpet for, you get to make a case. And you get to talk about why. You get to make freedom of speech claims to it, too.
Can you remember one where you had to go and explain?
Yeah, and this is a good example, because actually it was about religion. Rudolph Giuliani was upset because a Brooklyn museum had a Madonna with feces on it. And so he said, hey, everybody can make fun of Catholics. It's not fair. All these other groups get this kind of protection. Meanwhile, nobody cares if you make fun of Catholics. And my joke was, well, yeah, that's true. You can make fun of Catholics, but that's because they're wrong about God. They're the wrong religion, so we should be allowed to make fun of them. And so I wanted to do that, and of course they said, you can't do it. But I got to talk on the phone with the standards guy. And from working at Conan, I learned that, and this was as doing stand-up on Conan, I learned that you have to make a case for why you should be allowed to say it. And my case was that Giuliani was on every network saying what he felt, and that people shouldn't be shut out of saying the opposite view. So that got me kind of shoehorned into their, okay, so how can you say this that won't get us all the phone calls? It's not really about the law, it's just they don't want the hassle. So the standards guy came up with a way to tell the joke that was palatable. I had to just sound like I was sympathetic. Instead of saying, yeah, we make fun of Catholics because they're wrong about God, he said, just say, it's true, people make fun of Catholics a lot, but that's because they're wrong about God. Just that intonation, I got the joke on the air because I just changed the tone of voice a little.
And that's, I think...
Well, let's talk about being one of the first writers on Conan O'Brien show and launching the show. Just to refresh everybody's memory, when Conan O'Brien's show started, everybody thought he would fail. Like, who is this guy, and why was he chosen to get this prestigious late night spot that everybody wanted? So what were some of the things that you tried to think of as a writer to help establish like who he was and what the show's identity was?
It's funny, we didn't really think that way. We were very young. I mean, everybody was young. When I met Conan, he was 30, which amazes me now. And Robert Smigel, who was the head of that show, was 29. And I was 25, I guess. And the writers ran the range between those ages. But anyway, we just were trying to be really funny. And Conan, what I really admire him more than anything was how much courage he had then. Because he really was an unpracticed, uncertain performer. But he tried bits that I've seen really veteran comedian and broadcasters walk away from because they're just too risky and too strange. But he'd go, sure, I'll try that. for all of his greenness, he was like, yeah, I'll try that completely ridiculous bit that will probably bomb. And he would stand there and sell it.
Can you think of an example?
That was last night on Conan O'Brien. And then we'd show these really lush action sequences that would make it look like Conan's show was like Dallas with cliffhangers at the end of every show. And we had like cars going off cliffs that we borrowed footage from stock footage companies. But yeah, they would be having fist fights and, women dressed in, gowns, yelling at each other and stuff. That stuff was actually pretty easy to laugh at and pretty fun. But then I'd hang Conan out to dry on other stuff like, what's a good example? I remember it's kind of a important thing for a writer to go through, to watch somebody bomb with your material and feel the empathy for them and realize the positions you put them in. We did a thing on Conan that I created called Actual Items, where we do the thing where you show small town news and you're amazed at how silly the items are and you say how they're real, but we would make ours up so they'd be ridiculous, We had one that I wrote that was for coins. Sometimes in like TV Guide you see old coins for sale that you can mail away for. Mm-hmm. And the thing said, these coins are so old that you could buy slaves with them. And an awfully offensive joke. And he didn't really want to do it. But I said, come on, don't be a baby. And he did it, and it got roundly booed. And he sat there with a big smile on his face, and he just took that boo And I was sitting safely by the doors. Nobody was bothering me. I learned at that moment, like, it's just not fair to make other people bomb with your stuff as cute as you think it is.
I remember whining. I was with when I was writing for Conan. I went with Andy Richter to the New York Knicks were playing Houston in the finals, the NBA finals. So we went to Houston and covered it for the Conan show just for fun. And the bit was that Andy doesn't know shit about sports and doesn't care about it. So he just came up with one question to ask everybody, and it was, what about the Ori factor? And Robert Ori was playing for, but nobody, he was nothing. He wasn't actually a good player then. So we got him into the post-game big thing. And there was a guy with a microphone on a long pole, and I asked the guy, will you hit my guy, Andy Richter? He's like, I don't care. So on MSG, there's Patrick Ewing, real serious, he lost the game. And Andy goes, Patrick, what about the Ori factor? And Ewing giggled and went, what? What's the Ori factor? And everybody laughed. Anyway, about a week later, it was in a newspaper from Detroit or somewhere, and it said, Patrick Ewing determined to bounce back or whatever it was. When asked the question, what about the Ori factor, he shot back with steely eyes, what Ori factor? Like they turned it into a dramatic moment. Yeah, and that there was a hush. Like all just fucking lies.
What about it?
Yeah, what about it?
And it was just a goof. Holy shit fucking news.
God. You know, when I worked at Conan, writing there, and we did a thing with Bob Costas where we had him do when he had a show where he interviewed people on NBC. So we used to do tonight on Costas. Here's what he's doing. We do fake promos. So we wanted him to be interviewing what's left of the Wizard of Oz cast. And it was going to be a tree and a what do you call it? A munchkin. Is that what they were called?
Yeah.
Munchkin. And I played the tree, but we asked our casting person for an old midget. And she said, those things don't live very long. Holy shit. She actually said that. Those things don't live very long.
God bless her.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. When I was writing on Conan, I was a writer there, and I was laying awake in bed one morning, like not getting up yet. And I was sleeping in just underwear, no shirt for some reason. I usually sleep in shirt and underwear. And I just laying there and about, planning to fart and just shit. I just shit in my underwear. And for some reason, the fact that I was in bed mostly naked, it just really upset me. And I was really bummed. And then my phone rang, and it was my friend Dino, who was one of my guys I wrote with on Conan. And I told him what happened. I said, I just feel I don't want to get out of bed now. Like, I don't know, I just don't want to move. This was the grossest thing ever happened to me. Deal with it. And then I got out of bed, I cleaned up, and I went to work, and I opened the door, and the writer's assistant, this woman says, hey, I heard you shit your underwear this morning. I'm like, what the fuck? And every single person came up to me. Conan said, hey, how did that go, shitting in your underwear? And I go to Dino, and I said, what the fuck? And he goes, I assumed you wanted me to tell everybody.
Why wouldn't you? Right? You wouldn't have told me.
Didn't you tell me so I could spread the news before you got to work?
Amazing. And then the Conan show started in '93, and they, same as Caroline's, just threw the net out who's funny and who can write. And I had these short films that were like bona fide, good, well-made comedy shorts.
Now, how many people were on that writing staff?
I think there were 6 of us on the first staff. And this was before the show was on the air. This was like, the show came out in September, and I got hired like in May.
That's almost shocking to me, because to follow Letterman, and there was all the controversy about Letterman has jumped, you would have thought that the network would have thought, we need huge writing staff to take care of this kid.
Right.
And make sure this thing works out. It's your first real national gig, and there's only 5 other guys on the staff.
It was a small staff.
Yeah.
It was a great staff.
So here you're 24 years old, and you're at 30 Rock. This is real show business now.
Shit, yeah, it was huge. And I never got used to going in that building, 30 Rock. Every time I went in, I'm like, I can't believe how cool this is. I worked there for 2 years, and every day that I went in the building, I was just like, this is, I felt like Mary Tyler Moore is spinning around.
Right. And the show, and people forget this now because Conan's such a huge star. He took a lot of heat when that show started.
Yeah, people hated him, and and that was another thing that I learned from surviving failure was watching him take just shots to the head and having no retort because he didn't earn the show.
Right. They hated him because they didn't know him.
Yeah, and he never performed. Like, literally, his first professional performing job was the fucking Conan O'Brien show. And so he couldn't even go, yeah, well, fuck you. He had to go, I know, I'm trying, though, please. But he just stuck to it. And there was so many days, so many Fridays where everybody was calling their agents where we were told definitively this is the end of the line. And Conan would take off his jacket and take a deep breath, and he'd get on the phone with the network. And he just somehow would go, guys, I just know we can get some traction. He defended.
He never had a contract, right? It was a week-to-week deal?
Yeah, no, he could have been fired any minute. And they kept saying, I remember one day Rick Ludwin, who was the big late-night chief, said to us, one day he came in and said, guys, these Sandinistas are climbing over the walls. And I'm going to just drop my gun and run. I can't do it. And so we were all like, well, it's over. And that went on for like 2 years. It felt like that. To the point where sometimes we were like, can you fucking cancel the show? Like, I wanted it to get canceled because it was so tense. But Conan stuck to it. And also, we were writing for him really hard to sell, weird, fucked up bits that a lot of them bombed, and this poor dude would just sit there with sweat trickling down his neck, and he'd do them, and he would never bail on a bit. He just I really learned to respect him from that.
So he's a real tough guy in terms of being able to just wait this thing out.
Yeah, nothing can hurt Conan. He's a very strong guy.
And you're talking to Smigel's on the writing staff, and is that where you really learned about comedy?
Yeah, that's how I learned about comedy writing.
Yeah,
and putting together comedy for television and how to put it, how to make it work for an audience and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I think that's something most comics don't try too, is to write for other people. And how do you come across as how to write for someone with a totally different personality than my own?
Well, we were doing comedy sketches on that show, so I didn't write his monologue. I didn't have anything to do with that, but we would write. It was like making little movies or stage plays. Because the great thing about Conan or any talk show is that some of the stuff takes place in front of an audience. So we got to try these two things. Some of them were film bits that you'd go out and shoot and produce with characters and stuff, and other ones were bringing characters into the audience and learning how to work a script and cue cards with an audience there and stuff. I mean, an amazing experience.
Especially for someone with no experience doing this.
Nothing. And the other guys, one of them was Dino Stamatopoulos, who's now doing a show called Moral Oral. That's a great show. And just a bunch of guys. Everybody's gone on to do different things. But
do you think that show is what gave you the credibility to move in some of the other places you went?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Robert and Conan were really generous. And if it was funny, you got to run your bit. If you wrote something funny, they'd go, okay, go do it. And you'd literally get to cast it and direct it. And when I was 24, and if it was my bit, I would direct Conan. I'd sit on the couch next to him going, here's what you do. And I just boss him around. And he let me do that because if you were funny, they wanted you to run it. They trusted you. So, I got a huge amount of experience and then credibility because people started to know I was doing these bits. I was also the first one to do stand-up on the show because they just said, come downstairs and do a set. Like, it was just come down, eat your lunch, come down and do a set. So I got to perform on the show and do stand-up on the show.
So you never abandoned the stand-up thing as you're writing?
No, I used to actually run out of it because the writing sessions would go to like 3 a.m. and sometimes I would say I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'd go to a comedy club and come back. I did that a lot because I've never stopped doing stand-up because it's saved my life every time that I've bottomed out.
So why ever leave that show? Why not? Why aren't you still there? It seems like a great gig.
Yes, it is, but it's 5 nights a week. It's really hard. And actually, when Robert left, they asked me to take over and be the head writer. And at that point, I was 26, and that was pretty amazing. But I didn't want to do it because it felt like a job. It felt like a real job, and I was really burnt. 5 nights a week is really hard to do.
At a certain
I've always wanted to do that to those people. Like when I worked at Conan, I worked at 30 Rock, and there was my window looked out over this little plaza, and there was this crazy, wild, bearded man who would stand there with the Bible all day. Nice. He smelled like you could smell him from a long time.
Yeah.
And he'd just, God said, this is the day. I'm here to tell everybody. And we started fantasizing about getting, painting a car certain colors or something and, pulling up and saying, you're right, get in, let's go. We got to get going. Just totally fulfilling all this craziness. Wear some, show him a badge and go, you're right, the president needs to see you right now.
I knew it.
Oh, okay, I'm ready.
Yeah, how would they react to that? Like a crazy person?
Well, I got my stuff in a cart around the corner, though.
Just throw him on Conan like that.
Yeah, exactly.
To tell his story.
Hey, didn't you had a cool story? Did you ever tell the Martin Sheen story? I love that one.
Martin Sheen. Oh, yeah, he was on Conan, and we did a bit with him. And I wrote a bit for Martin Sheen to do on the show, Apocalypse Now throwback bit. And so the publicist actually said he wants to hear the idea before he commits to it.
Makes sense.
So I called him on the set of Gettysburg or some movie he was making, and he was in character. He was talking to me as Robert E. Lee.
Ugh.
In character. But and I've had guys do that before. The thing is that he's talking to me as Robert E. Lee, the general, but he's discussing, what time his flight gets in. 20th century stuff. What's the... well, sir, I fly into LaGuardia, I believe.
I'll have to leave my sweet Magnolia as I catch a connecting flight.
Catch a connecting flight through DFW. And get a town call, sir.
Atlanta's burning. Why, I gotta get down there.
And take the space shuttle to...
That's hysterical.
But so then we get it. He's in the dressing room, and I'm trying to talk him into the bit because he said he was going to think about it. So I'm trying to talk him into the bit, and me and two producers are talking to him, and then this little kid walks by at the door of his dressing room, and he goes, "That was one of God's little miracles that just walked by our door, gentlemen." He's being like the president or something. I don't know what the point of that was.
The West Wing kind of.
Yeah, it was one of God's little miracles. Just walk by our door, gentlemen.
Without any sarcasm.
No.
All right.
And we're
with sarcasm, that's funny.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really funny.
And I'm still just trying to talk him into doing my bits. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know. I love the children.
Well, did the kid have a hanger on his head? Then maybe he's right.
Little hanger hooked lip, all jerked up. I have two children, and I still think that was a lot of crap.
Yeah.
I still hate him for it.
That makes my head itch when I hear that story.
Oh, God. Yes. Miracle? Is
terrible.
It really?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the miracle?
Both of your drug-taking miracles.
Exactly. I aimed, I hit it, she came out. Wow.
Ugh. Ever do the bit?
What? He did the bit. He actually nailed it. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
It was just a bit we did called a two-way mirror in the dressing room. We pretend that we had two-way mirrors.
Oh, okay.
So we catch them doing weird things. And he was shaving, and he cuts himself shaving, and then he goes into the spiral, Apocalypse Now, Saigon dressing room thing.
Yeah, where he's just
starts going bananas.
Himself against walls.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How did you react to that? Did you make a noise?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I just really wanted him to do my little bit.
Of course.
Which I can't imagine. I can't fathom the motivation I had to do that job. Now that I'm 41 and I do as little as possible.
Amazing.
Just waiting to die.
Talk Martin Sheen into doing your bit.
Mm-hmm.
You got to not only write the friggin' bit and everything, but then sell it to the guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's too much work.
Yeah.
Ugh.
That's horrible.
And then you got to listen to dribble like God's little miracle.
There were guys who I tried to, what's his name? Rip Torn, is that his name? From
there's a Rip Taylor and
Rip Taylor. I don't know which one he is.
One's legit, one's a queer.
Yeah. Literally confetti throwing queer.
Yeah.
Literally. With no hyperbole.
No other way to look at it, right?
It's literally on his business card.
Oh, I see what's going on here.
Betting throwing queer.
That's funny.
You say that without the slightest malice.
No!
He would answer to it without flinching. I think it's Rip Torn that was on the Larry Sanders Show.
Oh, yeah, that's Rip Torn. He loves his drink.
Yes, and he showed up to do a bit that we had, and he had funny teeth. He wanted to put in funny teeth.
He wanted to.
Yeah, he said, I want to just put the funny teeth in and make funny noises. I'm like, well, we have a bit written.
What?
Yeah. And he was hammered. He smelled like booze.
Oh, really?
And I'm talking to him. I'm all 24 years old. I don't even understand what he is. And I just know he's famous. I didn't even watch the show at the time. And I'm like, will you do this bit? And he goes, well, I want to put in the funny teeth. I got these funny teeth. I'm like, well, this bit, we really prepared it. It's probably going to be really good if you do that instead. Well, I think my teeth are funny.
Oh, no.
I'm like, well, I'm not sure how the teeth... And he goes, they never give me this kind of trouble on the Larry Sanders Show. I get to do what I want there. And I go, yeah, go ahead and put the teeth in. Do whatever you want. We'll cut to you, and you do whatever you want with those teeth, buddy. And I thought, I'm letting this guy just hang out to dry on his own because I don't care anymore.
Right.
And then he did it, and it killed, and it was really funny. I don't even remember what it was.
He knew what he was doing?
Yeah, he did.
You gave him the rope to hang himself with. Yeah.
And he did.
And he lassoed a redheaded punk with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I was so hoping for a good ending there.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
wow.
That's happened before.